Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bull Rush. My name is Schmooglydorf. I am joined today, as always, with the Wolfman, and with a couple of great special guests. We've got Samurai Ed there on the left, Doug the Doug there on the right, and the every now and again showing Hansel in the background from Team Apex. These guys has decided to join in and on with us. How are we doing today, guys?
Doing good. How you guys doing today?
You're doing
I feel fantastic.
absolutely.
I woke up like an hour and a half ago, and I'm great.
How to sleep
Got
in.
everything out of the way.
How
Yep.
to sleep in. So this week we do have a fantastic group of topics to talk to you guys about. We're going to be talking about the Guardians Arena, the evolution of everything that's been going on with how it started out as just a kind of play with your friends sort of a deal and what it's turned into now. And we're going to springboard from that straight on into the competitive meta style, how it's been growing, and how the competitive feel of the game is right now. So let's get started. Right from the beginning, Guardians Arena, Reso had started that up from Team Synergy, and that the idea behind that was to be a kind of place where you could play with your friends, you know, play with your friends, get that chance to play as five because they didn't have a party system. And kind of what it's turned into now, you know, from my past couple of weeks' experiences, it's turned into a more competitive scene, a place where people can start scrimming against each other, and a place where a competitive scene has grown organically. How do you guys feel about that?
To be totally honest, I can't really comment on exactly why Reso started up GA. But kind of what it has turned into is, yeah, an amalgamation of the two. I know, like, part of the reason he originally wanted it out was because we don't have that party system. You're very much right. It'll give people opportunity to play as five. Like, you can hook up on the forums, all those sorts of things. But yeah, like, it definitely has kind of become a little bit of a weekly playground for competitive.
Yeah, I think it's hard to have organized fives play and not have it become competitive at some point.
Definitely. And you know, while I definitely see that there are teams that will form not to play competitive and are just looking to kind of fool around, you know, there are some lower, you know, there are some teams within the NA scene that are just there to kind of have fun. The vast majority of them have started to become more competitive, and one of the things I've definitely seen is a lot of the subs that are going in there are looking to have higher level play. They're not looking just to kind of fool around. They're looking to have higher level play. They're looking to fill in for a team and have a more a higher level experience than they
Yeah.
usually get out of a just standard solo queue.
Yeah, these other guys like kind of come in and like I feel it's kind of one of those things where they're kind of just off on the side and they're just like kind of nervous and they're just like, okay, fine, I'll be here and like support and maybe I'll get myself thrown in a team by happenstance if someone doesn't show up. And then like they play a game or two or three and then they come back next week and they're just like, man, I want to form my own team. Like, this is awesome. Like, you know, that's got to feel great for Rezo and for anyone that's like kind of been involved in the founding of this whole thing.
It's honestly been really cool to watch from our perspective, especially, yeah, on that topic of subs. And I think, like, what you're talking about with them, like, subbing in for some of the more established teams or some of the teams that just have practice, and kind of getting the taste for what it's like to actually play as a coordinated five really gets them interested and really gets that thirst going to try and, you know, make their own team and figure out their own play style and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, and so, you know, speaking as one of those subs, you know, I joined in on a team that wasn't playing, you know, on super high level. It was a team that was just a bunch of random guys on the free agents list. Zaladia just decided, hey, look, I'm going to go on the free agents list. I'm going to email as many of these guys as I can, and I'm going to find out, you know, how many of these people we can pull together for a team. They got like 7 people, and only 4 of them showed up on the first day. And they were like, crap, we need a sub. And so they pulled in subs. And then I got subbed 2 weeks in a row with these guys, and now I'm with them, as it turns out. And that's something that I think is really cool, because I see that happening a lot with other teams, like Nagabonds. You know, every week we'll have maybe a couple of new guys pop in, but I'll see one person from last week who stuck around, you know? And I think that's, you know, one of the bigger strengths, I think, of Guardians Arena when it comes to a competitive sphere is they start really kind of organically growing this sense of a competitive community, because then you'll get these people on the free agents list who are looking to get on teams, pop in and play with some guys every week. Maybe they'll have like 5 subs that are just kind of sitting there waiting, and they'll form a team and just start playing. And then they'll like who they play with and say, hey, I like playing with you. Let me play again. Let's do this again next week. And now we've got a new team out on the field. You know, that, I think, is one of the greatest strengths of Guardians Arena. Yes, it gives, you know, guys like you guys, Apex and Synergy and Team 84 and Team What, the ability to play competitively and test out new strats and get better as a team. But it also helps get a lot more teams out on the playing field, which is just better for everybody in the long run.
On the topic of those sub teams, I mean, yeah, it's been really cool. Doug and I actually, we work first shift for GA weekly, so we're kind of involved in a lot of the organizing of, like, we'll see, I think one week we actually had like 60-ish subs sign up. Yeah, like it was just a ton of people.
Yeah, it was a lot.
That's a lot.
And like, obviously, we're not gonna be able to find like actual teams that all these guys are gonna sub for. So we had to make like a few different teams, and we had a few guys like Zeltia, who you're talking about. Ringer's Rebellion, I think, started up as well. Sora and I started up Bananarama as kind of like a joke one week, but it was like they ended up doing pretty well.
Yeah, they did well.
Nice, man. And you know, that's all fantastic to see. One of the big telling moments, though, of it's going to be is how many of these sub teams stick around. How many of them say, you know what, we got our butts just spanked last week by Team Apex or by Team 84, and we know it was a very bad, but you know what, I learned something from that. So let's go in next week, pull out the NA counter comp, and just get spanked again.
Yep.
Oh god, the NA counter comp.
We want it. We want it.
We really
we
do.
want to see it. Shmoogle, you didn't bring it to us.
I know, it's sad. But don't worry, I might be able to coerce my team into doing it one more time for you guys.
Just for us?
Just for us. Just for you guys.
Yes.
I think it's funny, though, because when you say something like that with these compositions, and yet, like, I feel like only a few months ago we had this ideal set of, yeah, just play who you want to. There's no meta. There's no game. Like, there's no... Well, there's no game. There's no, like,
no
game.
No game.
There's no game. It's not a game. But... like, you know, there's no meta. These people could play whatever they wanted to and then just kind of throw together this randomness and kind of play how they felt. And now there's like an actual thing like forming here where like you want a tank and you want like an assassin or two and you need a ranged damage dealer, you need a support. Like, you know, there's these different idea sets that everyone seems to have, and then they form teams around that. And then now you have to think of the fact that even though there's only 15 characters to play in the game right now, and we can have doubles on each team, or not doubles on each team, but, you know,
mirrors.
Mirrors on one, that's the word. But we can have these multiples in the same game, and yet there's still, like, plenty of counterplay to happen and go on right here. So, like, that kind of says something about how the game has been progressing, and that's really something that I'm looking forward to seeing continue on in the future. What do you guys think about that?
Honestly, I wouldn't even say that there's like a hard meta right now. Like I wouldn't even say that like the comp, or like our normal comp that we run is the overall best for every situation and every team, which is actually something I think is really cool. You've got a lot of situations where other teams, because of their play styles, they can make things like no tank and double assassin work. Like they've got, you know, they've got a way to make that work really well, especially with, you know, us playing Canyon each week, and just kind of having that high pressure. So it's really interesting to see that, like, there have kind of been the teams that have formed these kind of comfort comps, like, you know, the original Wombo combos in League of Legends.
Yeah.
Yep.
You layer all 5 of your ultimates. It takes very basic comps to pull off. It's, you know, the heroes are pretty easy to pick, you know, solid, moderately easy to play. It's comfortable. It's something that's safe. But then, you know, as League of Legends progresses, you have these really intense poke comps, you've got these push comps, and you've got all these weird little intricate things. So I think over time we're definitely going to see a lot more teams start to exploit different play styles and kind of different metas, quote unquote.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of goes into really my just deep-seated hate for the word meta when it comes to a game as early on as it is like this.
Yeah, that's
you know,
true.
because a meta kind of it instills this idea of a strategy that is just across the board the one thing almost everyone runs. A good example, League of Legends. You have two people AD carry and support in bot lane, one mage-ish style character in the mid lane. One person top, one person in the jungle. That's a meta. But in Gigantic, you don't really have that. You don't have okay, so we're going to send one person here, one person there, one person... No, it's a very much a flux style. What the meta really would normally speak to in this sense is maybe what creatures you're summoning at certain points, or maybe what strategies, overarching strategies of where you're going to push, or what places are best to stand at during the match. That would be that. But beyond that, what comp you're running and what overarching style your comp is going to promote doesn't necessarily speak too much of a meta, because again, like you're saying, there are tons of different comps in other games you can play. So really when it comes to Gigantic though, we haven't seen a massive explosion of tons of different comps. Like you're saying, we see the comfort picks a lot. We'll see a Margrave forward. We'll see a Zenobia on the team because that 2-second snare is just that broken.
At level 2.
Yeah, we'll see that sort of stuff popping in. And with EU, like we've been seeing in the past couple of weeks, they'll almost always have at least 2 supports, and a lot of the times have a granny on their team.
2 supports
Yes,
or
they
2
do.
assassins are
Yeah.
the 2 comps that they like a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, it's interesting. I think really what speaks to a lot of the differences when it comes to strategy is just how they approach the map. With you guys and a lot of the the NA teams, how they'll approach the map is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna sit here and wait until we can engage on somebody. We're gonna kill somebody. With the EU, what we'll see a lot of is we're going to try for that if they're running that dual assassin comp, but if they're running the more support granny style comp, they're going to say, we're going to sit in this area. We're going to force the pressure here because they know they can.
They pull off kind of like a slow push type thing.
Exactly, yeah, slow push. And it works, it definitely does. But, one thing that I do see, though, is that every comp has its counter. If you want to go ahead and run that slow push granny comp, fine. We'll run 2 ranges and just poke you down, or 3 ranges and just poke you down for the entire time.
Or not just poke you down,
Or
but
just
have
not
3
poke you
focus
down.
the whole game.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe just choose to fight somewhere else. Okay,
Yeah,
you put your
that's-
granny hands there, let's go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's probably the #1 granny counter is just go somewhere else.
Exactly.
And it's kind of funny because the map that we have for competitive right now, it's Canyon, which a lot of teams are saying, it's not the greatest for competitive play. There's not a lot of strategic options. There's only 2 rotational options, and there's still a way to get around Granny. So
yeah, and that's the thing. It does actually almost make me wonder why people pick it, but that is neither here nor there. People will pick it because they like the hero. People will pick it because they like the playstyle or the strategy. And
they make it work.
They do.
yeah, they play really well around Grandma. Like, I haven't seen any NA team play around like that debuff on the hands, the debuff and heal.
Yeah.
That's they do that really well. They have their range just sit in there, and they don't really take damage.
Exactly. And I mean, there are NA teams that will play it. Like, I know Team 84 with Nth Dimensional will play Granny every now and again, but I think that's more speaking to Nth than it is anything else. And even when playing against them when they're playing it, they don't utilize that same kind of let's sit on the hands and utilize that debuff or heal strategy. But honestly, I feel like that's, getting into our next topic, getting into the differences between EU and NA, that really speaks to the differences between levels of aggression. Almost. NA is a much more aggressive, field. And I don't know if that, says anything about culture or whatever, but really what I think it says a lot to is just we have a lot of really interesting characters in our side of
That's
the
very
pond.
true.
Yeah.
Great example is Scoogy on you guys' team. Just the silent hero who says, "I'm gonna just engage here, and we'll deal with that then."
Now?
Yeah.
Now?
Just now. Just now. And, Failco on Team 84, I'm just going to run around the enemy team for like 5 minutes, and that's going to be that. That's going to be my game there.
Coco's weird and amazing, and I love her.
84 in general just has this. They actually have a really interesting strategy. Like whenever we play them, it's a different game every single time. It's fun.
That is
Yeah.
fun, and in and of itself kind of speaks to another strategy of trying to be unpredictable, because if you can't predict against them, then they can play whatever you can't counter them.
Yeah.
You have to go into every game in an unsure footing, like, okay, what are they going to do? And the only counter to that is just be sure of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing about this game, because people tend, like, because of a small assortment of characters, people tend to have like a main character and then like a good off character, or like 2 or 3 good off characters. And most of the time these off characters don't even fulfill like the same role, or the same like don't provide the same skill set as the others do. So it's kind of one of those things where the game doesn't really form around this kind of meta sense, but more of how a team synergizes well together based on what they bring to the table. And I think that's always something that should be like praised on about some kind of like a game like this, where it's just really fast paced and there's fighting all the time, as opposed to like, you know, a league game or another another genualized MOBA style game.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
really
kind of
cool.
you sit back and farm, and that's, you know, occasionally a fight will break out somewhere, and then if they win, you get a good push, and that's basically it.
And it's
Yeah.
great because all the heroes in the game can do damage, like they can fend for themselves. So you can play, like you can be a support main or a tank main, and you don't have to feel like you're just doing nothing all the time, you know? Like it's really gratifying, and they do a really good job of kind of like blending the roles all together.
Like taking Doug for instance, he's a support main, but like his 2 probably most played heroes are Sven and Zenobia, which play obviously very different roles within a team.
Oh, yeah.
But still fulfill that support role. Like when he plays Sven, you know he's going to be taking Burn and Pitch Perfect first, because he's much more
that's
of a
my favorite.
damage-oriented
Yes.
support. Yeah, but when he's running Zenobia, you know he's going to not take a first summon, because why do you have to with a level 2 power spike on Zenobia?
Exactly.
And he's going to play it a lot more supportive and let the team do a lot more. So it's really nice to see that within the same role you have all these like different styles of play.
Exactly, and even within, individual heroes to an extent, you'll see that kind of ability to fill pseudo roles or different like sub roles. Like Vodin is a great example. Yes, he does a lot of damage, but it's really supporty style damage, and a lot of that with the debuffs to allow them to just continuously be taking damage, and to deny them that health regen is very much a supporty damage role. And that's just, you could also go ahead and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take the launch and slow upgrade on my E and then just throw myself at the enemy team, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
You could do that as well, and in fact, actually, that's my favorite style of Odin.
Frontline Vodin?
Yeah, dude, it totally works, man.
Skooky Vodin.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Scooby
would
Vodin.
do it.
And
Assassin Vodin.
you have to get contagion on the poison as well, because then
Oh, no.
you're gonna
No,
sit
you're
everybody
missing out.
inside that poison, man.
You're
Everybody in
missing
that
out
poison.
on virulence. You're missing out on virulence, dude.
And that's goes into a great discussion. Like, build paths also define the many different ways. I mean, that's speaking
Yeah.
for itself. They define how different heroes can play differently, but something so strong as so simple as between choosing a left-hand branching path of one upgrade or a right-hand branching path of the first upgrade. Contagion being more of a, I'm going to place my pool of poison on top of you, versus virulence, where I'm going to sit way far across the map
Vice
and
versa.
still... Oh, other way, yeah, thank you. That's what I mean. It's just saying, I'm going to sit across the map and just say, hey, what? You're going to be poisoned, and now all of the rest of your team is poisoned, and that's just how it's going to work,
Yeah.
And that in and of itself will help speak to the just large amounts of variety within team comps, even if you're just picking the same heroes.
Yeah.
Let's have Vodin be a kind of more close range to mid-range hero in one comp and play a whole bunch of heroes around that. Or, you know what, let's have him be a little bit farther range and have an extra assassin or something on your team. That in and of itself is something that's really cool about the meta, and the kind of... I hate myself now. I use the word. But
Meta,
Hey, we
meta,
know what
meta,
you
meta,
mean.
meta.
yeah, exactly. That's something I love about the style of the game that can allow it to do this.
Yeah, This is something that we've discussed like a lot, like before, like not even on camera, but just like over the past like the entire time that we've played this game, is that we've put so much praise in the fact that these heroes can be played in multiple ways just based on how they build. And then like Shmoo said, like you can have a team of like Margrave, Zenobia, Vidasi, Trip, and Taito, and then you could have them all built one way and then built an entire another way, and then they play completely differently, like even though they're the exact same, heroes. Like that's something that's really amazing, and it's something that makes you kind of have to roll with the punches, even though you're all like what the heroes are capable of, but you don't know exactly they're going to pick until they've already picked it, and then you kind of have to adapt to what is actually happening. So there's this sense of counterplay, but then there's this other sense of like counterplay, and it's weird, and I love it.
Now, really a good question is going to be, because we still only have 15 usable heroes right now, and a 16th kind of just sitting in the penalty box for not being cool enough.
R.I.P. Roland.
Yep, rip. But when we get him back, and obviously as the game progresses, we're going to have more and more, and with the ability to play all these people in different ways, I honestly feel like it's gonna get a little hectic. It's gonna get a little chaotic when it comes to the strategies you can run like that. Do you feel as though that's a weakness for the game, or is it a strength? Is it something that can really define a style?
I guess I'd have to ask what you mean by like too chaotic.
Well, because as we're saying now, you can go ahead and decide, Voden's just the only great example I have, where you could decide if he wants to be a little bit closer range or a little bit longer range, if you wanted to play a little bit more supporty, or if you wanted to play a little bit more damagey. And you can change, just like Wolfie said, the entire feel of a strategy based on how you build certain heroes. With more heroes getting into the mix, say we have 40 down, 6 months down the line, we have 40 to 50 heroes, and all of them can play at least 2 different ways, and now you've got all of these different variables in the mix. Do you feel as though it's going to get a little bit crazy when it comes to like, okay, I see you're playing these 5 heroes, but now you've got at least 4 different strategies you can run with it?
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. To me, that honestly just ups the amount of skill you really need to continue to be a competitive player. I've said it for a long time. Gigantic's a game that's like it's one of those that you can just jump into and like have fun with. Like League of Legends, for instance. Like I'm not trying to praise League of Legends. I don't play the game anymore, but like when you first play League of Legends, you can have no idea what you're doing and still feel slightly accomplished, like you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same way as Gigantic. Like you can jump into the game for the first time, you see, oh, I'm gonna pick Voden. He looks awesome. Like a lot of people have been attracted to Voden's like art and all that, his concept.
His mechanics, a lot of the first-person shooter players like it.
Yeah, they can kind of latch onto that at first and still have fun with their hero, but then once you kind of start including, well, Voden can be played 2 different ways, how are you going to work out which way you want to play Voden, or which way is optimal, or even, I have to learn both of these. It's just going to show through for the players who have put the time in to learn both ways of playing and kind of learn all the ins and outs that both those paths offer. I know for a fact, well, not for a fact, I guess, but I know Motiga said in the past they don't want to do, like, League of Legends style hundreds of heroes that are just branching out of control. You've got overlapping stuff that these 2 heroes might as well be the same hero. Yeah. It'll really come to how Motiga wants to balance and how the development of each hero goes. Because if they choose somewhere down the line to just go crazy and like put out 150 heroes or something, yeah, I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I don't think it will.
Yeah.
Then I could see it getting too hectic, but I honestly think that just with more heroes coming out to a point, you'll start to see just more and more people getting excited about like showing off how like what they can do with a hero.
Exactly. Like back in the day when you could do the crazy, what we used to call the Teldo jump on Trip, being able to jump up to ridiculous places. using just Trip's Q because it used to go at a 45-degree angle up if you
Yeah.
jumped
Oh
early.
yeah.
It was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it gave the same momentum as you like after you queued, and you could jump at the same time, and you'd actually like instead of just going straight forward, like you'd go like whoop, and then you'd
Yeah, and it would just
literally
carry your momentum like straight
Yeah.
upward without
Oh,
like
yeah.
dropping you.
yeah.
Yeah, it was,
That
and
used to
I remember
happen.
him showing it off at PAX South on Mistforge, and he could jump up to the secret balcony from the ground using that.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll
And
tell
then-
you that
and then a month
there's
later they
actually
patched
some
it.
jumps that I think Baco figured them out on the forums that are quite reminiscent of those, even
yeah.
with the nerfed trip queue from that point.
Oh yeah, and you know, that's another like you're saying, that's another thing that just kind of adds to how the style of, you know, mastery versus being able to play the game really works. You could be good at a hero, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are a master at that hero. And I'll agree with you on that. You know, say, you know, as more heroes come out and as more characters are capable of being played and more strategies are out there, it's really going to feel like, you know, the mastery of it's going to define the strategies that are the best. You know, how good are you at this strategy is going to define, you know, how effective that strategy is going to be. And honestly, I feel like as more heroes come out, that's also going to be around the same time that certain styles of strategies and comps are going to rise above and say, okay, yes, this tends to work, you know, more times, and this is going to tend to work. You know, that's how it's just going to kind of grow and evolve. And honestly, I think that's for the better. I think that allowing allowing teams to evolve in that manner versus anything else is, I have no idea where I was going with this. Is better than the alternative than just
And I
letting
mean,
people play
brain
150
exploded.
different heroes.
I mean, you already kind of see that like rotation of, oh well, we're gonna play it this way right now because it's safer. Like that's kind of what Apex comp is. Like our pretty traditional comp that we've run just about every GA is Margrave, Zenobia, HK, Voden, and either Taito or Trip, whatever Skippy wants to play.
Yeah.
So we really just like we've kind of deemed that for our personal like set of 5 and for what playstyle that we run, this is just like the safest way to do things. Our comp doesn't really limit us to having to play one specific way. We can engage really hard and team fight really hard. We can rotate pretty well because we don't have super mobile heroes or anything. We kind
have
of round
wound
all the
pressure.
bases. Yeah,
We have
wound
good
pressure.
disengage.
Yeah. Well, and then that begs the question, is it a good comp just for this map, or when more maps are coming back into the rotation, when we finally get to see Mistforge again, or as new maps get rotated in, like we saw with the data mining, there are obviously new maps in the work. When those maps come out, do you feel like new comps are going to show up to complement those maps?
Oh man, I wasn't aware we were gonna
yeah.
get. I wasn't aware we were gonna get in the map subject. Jeez,
Well, we kind of have
that's
to.
that's a whole
at
that's a whole
first-
conversation on its
Yeah,
own.
at first, I'm definitely gonna have to say that the comps are just gonna rotate over, because I mean you're gonna have to play something you're comfortable on to try and figure it out. But I mean it comes back to like over time, like when people just have more time to play and figure it out, like our comp's not gonna be the best forever, or even close to it. Like it could totally change with, you know, what a map favors, because, you know, we've seen Misforge before. It's not very much like Canyon. Like it favors a lot of back cap heavy play a lot of the time. It favors a lot more heavy rotation play.
It
You
favors
can get
range play
away.
as well.
Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't say Canyon doesn't because everything's so close, but
Yeah.
you're going to start seeing a lot of different ways that this game can be played just based on the maps that are put out.
Yeah, and you know that also begs the question: is exactly how are those maps going to be rotated into a competitive circuit? You know,
Yeah.
with Rematch GG ramping up how they want to do tournaments, they did a test tournament. You know, it was last week just to make sure their systems were working. You know, really begs the question: as more maps come in, how many of those maps are A, going to be competitive feeling, and B, are going to actually be used in tournaments?
Yeah, and And you could even go even further and be like, I mean, we know what Misforge looks like. Like, we can't say that we haven't played on Misforge before, like in the past. But it's like, it's a much larger map with a completely different feel, many more points, larger scaling.
Really long.
These fights are skirmished like left and right, and sometimes it's like 2v2 or 3v3, like maybe 5v5 on a very, very random happenstance of just like a complete push, like at Clash Point or Waterfall that it's called now. But it's like, you have to think of what heroes are even good on these maps. Like, Griselma may or may not actually be very good on this map, and then like Imani, who is arguably, like, right now, like, a lot of people are saying that she's not good on Canyon, and she might be like, she is, I'm not going to say she's not, she is very amazing on the Misforge map, because it's just more open and there's higher vantage points.
I
There's
think, like,
so
back in the Alpha tournament, the Imani comp was, and I know you hate this word, but the Imani comp was pretty much meta at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you just had so much control over the map with Imani.
Oh yeah, and I mean, that also speaks to, the difficulties of how, a map is built. And I mean, Hi-Res Kate is an absolutely amazing level designer, and we'll see how that kind of gets tackled, but it's really speaks to the, building of the map. Are there more sightlines, and are those sightlines incredibly, incredibly powerful? Like, back at PAX Prime last year in PAX South, and they're showing it off, you could shoot from one portion of the map and hit a very pivotal point, a pivotal command point of the enemy teams, just by sitting there and doing literally nothing except having an ally near it. And you could just push it down, no problem.
And additionally, there was that line of sight from the middle of the map to Guardian. Yeah,
it was like middle of map to Guardian. Maybe it was like you had to be a little bit on the enemy's territory, but not much. You could still get out.
Easy.
It really depends on how the maps are built. And, we've seen the kind of over the mini-map of a new map called Magma, of a new map called Valley. These maps that, look almost as open as Mistforge from the mini-map.
Yeah, we've
seen. Yeah. So it could have those same problems.
All we have is a picture of an overhead view of what happened, or what it is.
I mean, if you just look at how like Canyons progressed, like from when we saw it a long time ago, like
way back back south when it was announced.
Yeah, the map used to be quite different, and I'm pretty sure that if Motiga, Mistforge got removed and stuff, they're not just working on like, oh well, we removed it and we're gonna put it back in and not do any, like, they're working on it. There's still gonna be other iterations of these maps, and there's still works in progress. So, like, we could see more like walls that counter that Imani strat now. Like, I don't know.
Or we might see like underground tunnels that may favor assassin maps as well.
That would be cool.
That would be really cool. Or maybe having a purely vertical map. It's just this massive just hole in the ground, and the points are at different levels of the map. We might see something like that, where jumping straight down is a reliable comp,
Yeah,
we
right.
might see that, like Naga at the bottom and Griffin up at the top, and we might just see that, or both of them are up at the top, but you have to fight your way through command points to get to it. You never know. We might see entirely different maps that will favor different comps. And going back to that original question, how exactly then will that be kind of put into a competitive tournament? Will it just be like, okay, so we're going to put all of these maps in like a random number generator with the exact same level of percent chance that we're going to play it, and we'll just pick one out of a hat? Are we going to have that, or is it going to be, first game is going to be on this map, second is going to be on this map?
Make it Here's the Storm style, where it's just kind of picked. The tournaments kind of just randomly draft it, and then they go picks and bans, and then you never, like, you'll again, it goes back to that term comfort picks. You'll see these teams with their comfort pick heroes on that game, but some heroes don't exactly do very well on those maps as they do on others. And in the end, I feel like that's going to come down to the basic skill level of each individual player. and like how they explore the map and how they kind of adapt to what their hero is capable of doing, and then fixing that and basing that around of what their environment is, and then they kind of do pretty much whatever they want to, and then hopefully it works out, and then they'll test, and some might fail, some might work, and then you just see all this stuff like just progress and level as it like a staircase, and then everyone just kind of goes, wow, that's amazing, or that's horrible, like what are you doing? And you know, there's just so much to think about when it comes to this style of game where it's 3D movement, a lot of different players, a lot of different play styles per hero, these different comps. Like there's so much depth to this game that people like don't exactly think about all the time, and then the competitive people think about this constantly. It's like, what if we want to roll in
The beam team.
Beam team.
Yeah.
what if we want to roll in Gnosis to our team right now? Like, who can we trade for, and what can we do comparatively? Like, you know, there's just a lot. Like that's my point. There's a lot to think about. You know, it's great. I love how this game has been progressing, and I can't wait to see it continue.
Now, the question then, of course, for you, Team Apex, how would you want it rolled into the competitive circuit? Would you want it to be kind of like, oh, it's a random chance that it'll get this map, the other map, or the other one, or do you want it to be structured?
I've actually kind of talked about this with some of my teammates and just some other people in the competitive scene quite a bit. It'll really depend on like how many maps are available and what those maps are when competitive starts. So let's say like we have a tournament where it's like Canyon and Misfortune or something, like in the future, right? Like they put Misfortune back in and we have a tournament for that. Then I think most teams would like to just straight up avoid Canyon.
Yeah.
Like a lot of teams just really dislike Canyon for a competitive map. So I really see in that case Misfortune being the go-to option. Like play best of 3 on Misfortune or something. But to answer like the actual question about more maps, how I'd personally like to see it done, let's say there's 3 viable competitive maps in the game. I would like to see no map bans or anything, a best of 3, 1 on each map.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then once you start getting more maps in, like let's say you have 5 maps, you start getting to the point where you don't want to do a best of 5 because there's still like 20-minute games possibly. So you start having map bans. So what I'd like to see is like you have a best of 3 on 3 different maps. One team bans one map and one team bans a different map.
And then how would you tackle, you know, like for semifinals and finals of tournaments, you would want to have a best of 5 there. How would you tackle that?
On a best of 5, I would honestly have to say either just run the 5 maps, which is a little unreliable, I know, or you could, I guess, just make it so that you have those 2 bans, and then for the last 2 games or something, you have some kind of like pick system.
Yeah, so like you flip a coin for each map, and whichever team wins the coin flip, they get to choose what map they play on for that game, and then the other team gets to choose what map it is.
I kind
for
of
the
like
other
that
game.
idea.
Yeah, maybe you have it like at the beginning of the game where, okay, this team won the coin toss, they pick first map, then the next team picks second map, then third map. It just goes back and forth.
And that would work that way as well. And honestly, I would love a tournament organized in that manner, because then we do have a sense of structure, and even then a sense of strategy being employed in things that are just beyond actual playing the game. It's just controlling the environment that they play in.
Yep.
And I mean, it does more than just that, to be honest. Like, it allows a higher level of play to be seen by the spectator. Let's say like Team Apex, there's 5 maps in. We hate one map and we're going to play like garbage on that map regardless. We say, all right, we're going to ban this map because we're just going to put up a crap performance. If they practice it at all, like we don't have the time to dedicate to practicing this map and staying as good as we'd like to on these other 3 maps. So we're just going to have to throw that one out instead of splitting our time to practice that map and maybe not putting out a better performance on a different map. So it really gives the spectator a better chance to see like, okay, this is all the work that they've put forward. This is kind of like this is what they've prepared for in that sense. And it also offers that strategic standpoint for like kind of boot camping or practicing before tournaments and
Yeah.
big finals. Because,
Mhm.
this team never plays this map. They boot camp it super hard, figure out one really intense strategy, and maybe it's the other team's best map, and they think you're just going to be trash on it.
Yeah.
So you pull out this strategy and you beat them on their best map, then they're in a weird position.
They're
Like
on
it offers
Yeah.
a lot of different strategies for how you play those best of threes, best of fives.
So that then, of course, brings us into our last topic of the overall competitive feel, and we're kind of talking about it in like a growth sense. This idea that there is a large room for mastery. Difference of mastery versus just being good at the game. That very well will allow the game to become more competitive as time progresses and as more content is brought in.
Yep.
But really the question is, because we are living in the present and not the future, is how does the game feel from a competitive standpoint right now? And I know really all we can play on is Canyon, but how does that feel?
Personally, I'm with the group that really dislikes Canyon. I still get to play Gigantics. I'm happy with it, but I'm I'm not a big fan of just it's a brawl. Like when we played CP a couple weeks ago, I don't think there wasn't a fight going on at any point in that game. Like it was literally just blood for blood that entire game. It was great.
Mm.
But still, like that's just teams mashing together in the
From
center
a
of the map.
competitive standpoint, you can't just have that over and over again.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
can. And from what I was hearing, a lot of that same thing was happening this week when people were playing against Synergy. A lot of that same style. And again, I felt that a lot even just playing up against you guys and playing up against Team What. It's just the same thing, people bashing into each other. And last week, Perry, or Noirbot here, had kind of talked about it from his point of view, was that he felt as though the game didn't have any real sense of permanence. There wasn't a permanent quote-unquote objective to be pushing for beyond just getting the wound on Guardian. And I remember talking to you about this the other night, and you had much of a different point of view on that. That there was kind of a permanent feel to the game.
Yeah, there's not like a definite permanence. Like I can't argue that. Like if you take a creature, there's no guarantee that anything like they can just resummon it. But I will say from a competitive standpoint, there definitely is a feel of permanence. That feel of permanence, like it really comes from high priority objectives, in my opinion. So, like that sense of permanence where we've dedicated 3 focus to summoning a Yeti Cyclops. If they force an amazing fight there when we're not prepared or we're not in a good situation, we're pretty screwed. They've just deleted 3 of our focus that we've planned for and possibly just not had other people save afterwards. So there's very little possibility of us getting that 3 focus back within a reasonable amount of time.
And never mind, with
and on
all of the
top of
adult
that,
creatures, you only get 1 summon for each of the ones on each person.
exactly. And also, like, it's time, it's a huge chunk of power, and it's a 1 team fight. Like, if I'm playing HK and I have 3 focus, anyone on my team with CC, Scoogie if he's playing Margrave, Voden, like Bixel playing Voden if he's got 1 focus, all that needs to happen is 3 people locked down for 2 seconds, and my
Yep.
3 focus HKs won a team fight. Like that's the long and short of it. So I've just like lost a team fight virtually,
Yeah.
and then lost another team fight, and then lost something else, and then another sense of permanence, at least in my opinion, comes from those pushes. As soon as the push goes down, like the actual one team acquires full power and the rampage is started, that is a feel of permanence to us, at least as a competitive team. It's something that you can't really do anything about at that point. It's like, okay, we lost the push. We're not going to be able to, we're locked in this mode. We can't do anything to get the main objective. We have to, we're locked into a few different situations. We can either push, try and wipe their creatures and just give up the wound, or we can try and defend it, like on the wound. We can try and catch them on the rotation back. Were they able to get past us? There's just so many things that happen off that, and it's caused by that permanence of, okay, they got this push, and pushes aren't unlimited before Clash.
Yep.
So from a competitive standpoint, we kind of have that, okay, this many pushes has gone down, this is when Clash is going to begin, and that's where you kind of have to start playing a very different style of game.
Yep.
So even when you hit Clash, that's a very permanent feel to us. It's, yeah.
Clash in and of itself is a much more permanent feeling situation to be in, and that was one of the few places before I had this discussion with you that I felt was 100% permanent. And I have to applaud you for this. That argument that you levied was enough to change my opinion. I'm like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. And now thinking back to it, yeah, that is definitely the case. Those upper creatures and getting that power, getting that push, definitely feels permanent. And while a lot of these things would almost be little things or tawdry things to the casual player, like, oh, hey, look, I used 3 focus here and lost a team fight, whatever, from a competitive standpoint, it's much bigger because, again, a great example, League of Legends, 1 kill, in a regular game, it's like, okay, yeah, whatever, but a game in League, it's like 8 kills is like the normal amount you'll see in a game.
For a team that actually knows how to hold the advantage that they got from those kills, yeah, that's a very snowbally advantage.
And even then, you see that as well in Gigantic. Being able to get that first blood gives you the experience you need, and also the 4v5 upper advantage to go ahead and push an objective, to be able to push something like Vista. And that is another question, is how much do you feel the quote-unquote lack of permanence from the game is affected by the map? Do you feel like on a longer map, on a more spread out map, that certain points that are much more important and much more pivotal feel more permanent?
I mean, definitely. Like, if you look at Misfortune, for instance, let's look at like Clash Point. If a team starts summoning a Yeti or a Fire Drake or whatever up there, that's you gotta do something. You have to do something, or else you've lost probably 2 or 3 team fights trying to kill that thing, and then maybe another 1 or 2 more in Clash if you haven't already killed it.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I guess like the rotational style too, like it offers a lot more like sense of permanence from like that quick paced play. On the longer map of Misforge, it, like I said earlier, it kind of favors backcapping a little bit. Let's say you have a Trip that really likes to go just destroy the other team's creatures. She runs back to Bell, and she's wiping out that creature. The team has 4 people now. So the other team has to decide, okay, are we in a position where we can send someone back? If we are, who's in that position, and is that someone who we're willing to send back? Or is it better to push up and try and win this 4v5 fight before the assassin can either take the point or rotate back to join the fight and put us in an unfavorable position because we're fighting on their summon?
Yeah.
It does offer a lot more like just pressure. And okay, there's a Trip in the back of our base. No one can get there. That's permanent. If like we can't do anything, they're gonna get about 12 power for free.
Yeah,
that's just going to happen. What can we do to trade for this? Or what can we do to counter this? How can we get the power to get that push first?
And even now, there are other things as well that offer a sense of permanence, regardless of the position they're in. Power orbs at the end of the game in Clash definitely are a very huge permanent objective. Regardless of how quick and easy it is and how impossible it is to remember when they're coming up, they are a permanent objective. And if we see more things like that, or an evolution of that mechanic as to where it becomes a big deal to fight over a power orb, or a point on the map that has a power orb there, like maybe power orbs from kills, or like whatever, a creature kill summons a power orb, fighting over that will become a much bigger deal, which will kind of go into what the chat has been talking about, is like this kind of idea of from a spectator sport.
Yeah,
sort of
I was actually about to touch on that.
How much of this is something that can be enjoyable to watch from a spectator position, or how much of this is going to be translatable to a spectator? Is it going to be easy for a layman to be able to watch the game and understand what's going on, or is it going to be difficult to? And
it was something that Unspoken Fear asked. On the topic of competitive play, does Gigantic seem to be a game in which would be enjoyable to watch? Or does it seem a little too chaotic due to always being in a brawl, or quote-unquote always being a brawl? And I saw that Egleb and Doug the Doug did answer kind of Egleb's asking if they had watched any of the approved broadcasters a few weeks ago, like play the game, and it kind of goes into one of those things of, you know, when we get hopefully when we get the spectator mode happening, like for either just people that want to watch a match or if they just want to watch a tournament somewhere down the line, like how will the spectator mode be set up? How, like, what exactly will they show? Where will the camera be? Like, where will we focus on? And then there's going to be like stuff about like shoutcasters of like what should they point out? Like what should they speak to the audience who may just be tuning in for the first time? Like will it be easy for them to understand exactly what's happening? You know, because there's like we've discussed a lot of stuff obviously because we've been going on this for like mostly the same topic for 50 minutes now. Like there's a lot of stuff to go on in this game. And it might be a little overwhelming for some people, especially on a smaller map like Canyon. So do you guys think that it would be something that's enjoyable to watch just from a new person that came in and just is like, hey, what's this game?
I read what Doug posted, and I gotta 100% agree. I think a lot of the confusion that could come from casters like running out of breath on Canyon, basically, is just that there's not a break on Canyon. Like I was talking about our game against CP earlier, it was constantly fighting. Like I don't think if there was like a color shoutcaster, like a shot calling or not that, but play by play. That's what I'm thinking. Shoutcaster and like an analytical shoutcaster. The analytical shoutcaster wouldn't be talking at all the entire game. But when you start to see these bigger maps, you do have a little more downtime where
people are rotating or grouping together.
Exactly. Like, okay, they're rotating over here, so we're going to rotate to try and counter that, and then they see that this isn't working or they can't find a way in, so they're going to rotate back around this way or send someone around. Maybe that rotation was just a bait to send someone else around this way.
Yeah.
Or I think as you start to see the maps that are more suited for competitive, and I was going to say earlier, it also does depend on the spectator client. I'm very curious to see what Motiga is going to come up with, because a good spectator client is going to be pretty vital to whether or not this game is going to be spectatable in, the easiest way.
Yeah, and it's going to have to be built to be able to view things on that third level plane. Like, yes, you can have something that's like a fourth person kind of omniscient thing, but you're going to miss a lot.
Please no CSGO model.
Yeah. And for a while all we've had is, just let me watch what this person's doing,
Yeah.
At the big conventions, that's what it was. I remember back at PAX East, we had the guys from, what was that group that we were working with? It was the guys that run a lot of high school tournaments.
I forgot, but they had a really nice setup, and then I remember that I was sitting in the back, and I actually did get a chance to run a few cameras during one game, and it felt really kind of cool.
Yeah,
but it was just
awesome.
but they just kind of go behind one player. Like they had it set up about I think 6 or 7 different cams. Like
it was
one
cams.
for each player. Yeah, it was one for each player, and then this kind of 4-way split screen based on the viewpoints of 4 separate players at once. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It was pretty well set up, and I thought it looked really great. But I would kind of at the same time like this kind of over top maybe aerial view, like not like straight down, but like kind of like a bird's eye.
Kind of like how Smite had their early spectator client to be, where you were just kind of like an extra person that had fly enabled.
It was kind of like a free cam, and you could kind of just rotate it and then just kind of zoom in, zoom out sometimes. I think that would look kind of great. But, I still want to be able to have that kind of thing where we're doing right now, where we're kind of following behind a person.
Exactly.
And it's just like, Charnock's setting up, and now, there's 4 people in front of him, flame on, and just like everything is going insane. And then it kind of swaps
or like
over.
Right after a fight, you can like go back and like watch from that player's perspective, like how they got the pentakill or something. Like, that's awesome.
That'd be incredible.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of that, I think, is going to also speak to, the shoutcasters are, as it has been in the past, are almost certainly going to have to be separate from the people running the cams. But one thing that we did see on that is how difficult it is to sync between the two of them. You know, the camera people have to be watching for the big play, you know, and it has to kind of be running in with the running monologue of those shoutcasters.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be kind of
Takes
this...
a lot of work.
Yeah, it's going to be
a
a running development, I think, of that spectator client. And what that is going to really do is answer a question that I had was, you know, how prevalent or how easy is it going to be for a spectator to see what was the big moment? How easy is it going to be for a shoutcaster to say, this is a huge fight, you know, this is a huge push or a huge objective that they got here? How easy is that going to be to see? And again, a lot of that's going to be dependent on that spectator client and how easy it's going to be for the camera people to notice them going on.
Yeah, and
I
then,
definitely agree.
Like even further down, like, you know, when after a match, it's like, let's jump to the analyst desk and see what the big plays were, and then like, are they able to freeze frame the camera and then like
And say, okay,
use their
this happened
hand,
here.
draw something, and then it shows up on the screen. It's like you'll see Trip come in from the side here, and
Like with a
Trip
smartboard in the
has
background.
like smartboard. Trip has. Chip has a rank 3 focus right now, and they're grouped up, and she jumps right in focus and jumps, like, gets them all down. Moza's completely out of the fight, and she's dead, and now they are down one player. Now,
Now they can push here, they can do that.
Now they can push here, and Trip is completely uncontested over on the side. She still has her stealth available, and no one is answering to her. You know, like, that, like, there's so much to go on there. It's just, there's so much potential, and it's so exciting. I want
I
it to
100%
happen.
agree. Yeah,
I want it to happen.
Yeah, and that in and of itself just speaks, you know, just being able to do that on the fly, being able to, you know, Wolfie to be able to just kind of pull up something he pulled out of his ass, you know, that still sounds exciting and interesting, you know. We'll speak to how cool of a spectator sport this is going to be and how much enjoyment the audience is going to be able to get out of it, because all of the building blocks are there.
And the look and the feel and everything is really fun too, and like easy to see. Like if somebody does a big engage, like you're gonna see like stuff flying around, and you know there's gonna be particles everywhere. Like, well, it's gonna be fun to watch.
Something that we kind of talked about, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, where Perry was saying,
I think it was the week before,
with the particles, where a lot of, you know, spell effects weren't necessarily there or down packed yet. It was harder to see if you were landing a spell or whatever. Kind of goes into, you know, honestly, I feel like they don't need to be big. They don't need to be overdone. They don't need to be all over the place, because I don't know about you guys, I watch, you know, the Worlds for League of Legends, and it's like during big team fights, I'm having a hard time seeing what's going on because of all the spell effects. I don't feel like we have that problem in Gigantic.
I actually don't either. There's a few things that, like, I think Doug's actually talked to me about. Using some of the bigger animations and kind of the more opaque, the more obvious animations to your advantage, but even then, it's not like a
huge distraction.
Yeah, it's not a huge distraction in my opinion to the viewer. It's more like player-to-player interaction, and the one that I was talking about, I don't know if you care to give this info, but Sven's acid flask. You know how when you throw it down, there's that big poof of pink / purple gas,
and then it's a skull. And
if there's an assassin on you for a split second, that's pretty blinding.
Yeah, it is.
So you can actually use kind of that cloud and the animation from that cloud to get a rougher player-to-player interaction for that assassin. But even from there, I don't think it's too distracting for a spectator, or, you know, if they do the spectator client correctly, that it will be too difficult to see what's going on.
Yeah. Yep. But that kind of goes into another counter argument of something that Perry also discussed. Like when he was doing the shoutcasting thing at PAX Prime a few months ago, he was saying how, you know, the running joke was that every time that Charnock used Flame On, like they'd shout Flame On, because that's really kind of the only focus you can really see happen. You know,
one of the only big focuses that are really visible. You know, like
we were saying, he was saying,
Margraves, Gnosis's,
but
he was
like
saying how these things happen, like he was saying how these things were happening like really quickly, and it's just kind of hard to really like hype anything else because it doesn't really, like, things are just really fast, and maybe that could be something that could be balanced just a little bit, just because, you know, you want these new people to understand what's going on, and you want it to be simple, but at the same time you want them to understand like when exactly was a really big point? Like, what was a huge play that happened? You know, like this argument of saying that Mozu's focus happens way too quickly and does way too much damage to be counterplayed. You know, you can see it, but it happens, and then Charnock focus, like, you see the pillars erupt, you see the lingering fire. Margrave, you see people get knocked up, the ground animation of the dirt kicking up and the rocks flying up.
And that yellow, like, explosion.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, you don't really see a lot of what goes on until it's already happened.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be something that works with development and with time, and of course with the spectator client getting, you know, implemented, and then of course, you know, nailed down to what works best for those people who do want to shoutcast and do want to go ahead and, you know, watch games. It's going to be things that come with time, but we are, of course, coming up on our hour here. I just want to thank our lovely gentlemen here, Samurai Ed and Doug, to come on in. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for having us on the show. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a grand old blast. If you guys are not already doing so, please go ahead and head over to teamapex.gg for their Twitter and follow it. Yep, it's directly above them. You can go ahead and follow that Twitter, and from there you can, of course, find all the other fellows on theirs. I know Samurai's is one of the most recent tweets/retweets on there, so you can go ahead and follow pretty much everybody through that. Don't forget to follow my Twitter at Shmulidorf, Twolfman's at Twolfman, and, of course, the GG Unleashed Twitter. Thank you guys for hosting our content, at GG_Unleashed. Don't forget to go to our YouTube channel to watch this VOD. I'll be putting that up very shortly. And don't forget to check us out next week. I don't know what we're doing yet, but it's going to be something fantastic. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.